Hello, I am Patrick Washington. This is DallasWeekly.com. We have City Managers TC Broadnax here with us, speaking about the City of Dallas. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
All right, let's just get right into it. Obviously, there's been a lot of stuff happening around protests, around COVID-19, etc. What has the city been doing to, first off, the COVID incident, then the protests, and since everything has kind of come up in the topics of discussion, what is the city preparing to do down the line for the next few days or at least a couple weeks to respond to not only COVID, but what's going on with the protests?
Well, I'll tell you, it's been, I think, quite a bit of unprecedented times, beginning with COVID. You mentioned late March, obviously we went into, and the mayor declared an emergency, and we went to a stay-at-home order in concert with the county and the city. Just as it relates to our normal day-to-day services, have really had come to a halt for at least a month and a half, and we're just now beginning our phase one reopening and watching the community begin to come out of the stay-at-home orders, and we're managing through continue to encourage social distancing and people taking the necessary hygiene protocol, and just being cognizant that while everything is allowed to be open, doesn't mean you have to partake in it, particularly given your own health concerns and or just some of the worries that are still out there about too many people in the same places. So I think we've been truly trying to educate our community, as well as, and particularly our communities of color, based on some of the impacts directly related to individuals with certain types of health issues. And so it's been a struggle, and I would just say finding our balance in that and walking into what I guess the new normal looks like, really kind of took a back seat to the issues surrounding George Floyd's death and all the issues and protest and people wanting to see the change. I think that, ultimately led to the death of Mr. Floyd, but has also impacted, Black and brown individuals, for many years. And so I think between that and COVID and the ongoing, I think I won't call it tensions, but I'd say unrest when it comes to people not being comfortable with what has transpired, and then the systemic issues that have existed for a while. I think you put all those things together, and we're still trying to encourage our protesters who are protesting peacefully to still try to adhere to wearing face coverings and try to do as much social distancing as you can, but I know that's difficult. But I'll tell you, Patrick, that is really symbolic of the importance, I think, of what's going on out in the community, given the challenges from a health perspective that everybody knows. They are still out on the streets, still trying to have their voices heard, and in some cases risking their own health and safety just to ensure that people wake up and figure out how we get law enforcement and our community on the same page.
Okay. In reference to that, let's talk about the state and what it's been doing, because every time we review what the state has been doing in response to COVID, it seems to be antithetical to what the city's trying to do. Obviously we're reopening, we have no control over that. But it does seem as though that the lieutenant governor and the attorney general, the lieutenant governor, and the governor seem to be hell bent on pushing quickly, even though just today we found record numbers of COVID-19. Do you find as a city manager that the state has any influence over the community's response to COVID? And is there anything that the city can do to counteract some of that detrimental information? Well, I won't say detrimental, excuse me. The more hastened openings and the less tempered reestablishing of normalcy, as opposed to what the city's been doing, which has really been measured steps. You put out messaging of social distancing. We get those messages, so I know those are happening. And then I get things from the state that's like, restaurants open full capacity next week, and it's like we're still seeing numbers, especially in communities of color. So that's a lot to say. Does the city have a response to the state or a way to deal with these states edicts as opposed to what it wants to do and what it knows to do for its own community?
Well, I'll just be straight up. The state is the ultimate authority, the governor, on these kind of declarations and what, in fact, his orders and or guidance are to cities. And this is a big state with, urban areas and rural areas. And so not every location is situated or having the same types of effects. But again, it starts with the state. And then if the state won't allow it and or mandate certain things, then the counties and the cities, given the structures of government, have to comply. If the state was silent on it, then the city falls under the county's guidance. And we had been in lockstep for the most part with the county, as they are our health authority, since the beginning. And we had been working in partnership to do the right things based on data. And obviously the state began to make some decisions that were different from and or counterintuitive to what is going on in the city of Dallas or in Dallas County, or even the other two counties that comprise and are within our city boundaries. So what we've been doing, despite and in response to some of the things that the state has done that have taken our authority away, has continued to, with the county and the city, advising and encouraging people to take their health and the safety of their patrons under consideration. And while they may be able to open, if you don't feel comfortable and or the numbers are still where they are in Dallas County, that you may want to continue to protect yourselves and your patrons and your employees by staying closed and or restricting the amount of individuals you might have in your facilities, and then practicing all those things that we have been talking about for the last 2 months. And so I do believe if you look in some organizations, in some stores, they are not following the broad reopenings, but are still being closed and still doing drive-through service and still doing touch-free related activities. So we're continuing to encourage people to make their own personal decisions, but err on the side of health and also safety for the people that they're around.
All right. I'd like to move back to the protest, but not focusing on the protest in general. I wanted to know, have there been any discussions amongst the city officials about the response to what the messaging from the protesters are, specifically in the police reform with the slogan "Defund the Police," other things like that, the systematic racism within law enforcement? Has the city had any discussions thus far about its response and what step could be taken to meet or negotiate with the community about that?
So I think there are several conversations going on multiple fronts, whether that's with the mayor, who is involved and in conversation with clergy members and other individuals who I think share the same types of concerns and have raised them and want the city to make some advancements. In addition to several of our council members are also interacting with stakeholder groups, the clergy, as well as many of the activists and many of the people that are representing individuals as a part of the peaceful protest that we've had. In addition, our police chief has constantly been in conversations with many of the same groups who are out requesting and desirous of change, in addition to our police oversight board. And I know as recent as June 4th, I worked with the chief and I think presented 11 items entitled One Dallas Real Change that speaks to many of the concerns that have been raised by not just people here locally, but also nationally as it relates to trying to get better responsibility, better equity when it comes to how we associate law enforcement and community, more accountability and legitimacy through some specific actions that we've taken that really get at trying to turn around and or adjust our police department to be responsive to some of the systemic issues that are built into the fabric of law enforcement and I think this country for the most part. And so we've done and laid out 11 actions that in some cases, 6 of them were within 0 to 30 to 45 days worth of action that I think are very impactful, from the duty to intervene policies requiring individuals, as you've seen, for example, the law enforcement people associated with the George Floyd incident, his partners did not intervene when there was use of force that could result in someone's death. And so the chief on June 4th implemented that policy. It was already a stated policy and or known just based on what peace officers do, but she actually put it in her general orders, which are the rules and procedures that everyone has to follow to ensure that it does occur and that there could be discipline if you fail to intervene. She also is going to implement, and in the process of it, it's still reviewing the language with our legal department, of requiring a warning before shooting policy, so that if you can feasibly advise someone that unless they comply, they might end up having deadly force used against them, that if you've got the opportunity and the necessary space and time to do that, then you're required to give someone that warning so they are clear about what might happen. Additionally, the chokehold and chokeholds in general have been banned by our police force since 2004. However, it was only banned as part of a bulletin that was given out and shared with officers. The chief, again, given the weight of the orders, moved that bulletin for no chokeholds into an order, again, to make it more prescriptive and a rule that individuals ensure that they have to follow. Also, she began immediately and we'll be working with our Community Police Oversight Board to review all use of force policies in the police department, and is hopeful to come back with any recommendations or updates before the end of August. And then she's also beginning at the end of this month, going to begin to publish for the public online all of the contacts that officers have related to traffic stops and citations given, be able to break that down so people can see what is going on out there and who we are coming in contact with, so that our community as well as our oversight board can begin to monitor and see if there are any disparate type activities and treatment for communities of color. And lastly, in that very immediacy piece, and I know I'm going on, I'm sorry, Patrick, but I think these things are important for people to know. We are also, before the end of this month, going to develop a policy that's clear around body cam and dash cam video release, so that we can find a way to more expeditiously release the body cam video in the spirit of transparency, as well as to find a way to make sure we can build trust in the community, so that people are not just having to read about the things that they may or may not have happened, but we can actually show clearly what has happened when we have those critical incidents, as we call them, involving an officer using force, and particularly deadly force. Additionally, there's been some talk by advocates and other groups nationally around mental health and how that particular, I think, societal issue is addressed by law enforcement. And so we've already had underway a program called Right Care, which involves mental health professionals responding to incidents that may involve someone who might be in mental distress, along with obviously officers, to ensure the safety of the behavioral scientists or the behavioral workers that go out. We're looking to expand that as a part of our next budget. We had planned to add 2 teams, and we're still going to do that, but we're also going to layer that with other types of behavioral service help as it relates to call diversion, stepping that up, as well as doing some chronic consumer-related activities for repeat people who use 911 or are often repetitive, to ensure that we get those people the right help. Additionally, I think you've seen it talked about nationally, but it's something that we've been looking at doing. It's just been a technological problem, but the chief is going to be investing as a part of, and by the end of November, in the software updates, as well as the programmatic efforts that will allow us to have an early warning system for officers, so that if an officer has 3 or more incidents where their supervisor should be alerted that there may be something going on with that officer, whether just in their normal day-to-day life or just something going on with them so that we can intervene, see if the officer might need counseling and or ensure that they get the training that they need if in fact, again, those signals start to ring. And then last, I got 3 more items, Patrick, and I'll be quick. We're going to look at doing a comprehensive cultural assessment of the police department to really start to better understand if there are internal DNA things to the police department that we need to make changes to and find a way to ensure that our officers, at least the culture in the department, reflects the culture that the community expects and that we expect, obviously, as local government officials. And then we're going to also implement and take, I won't say take our show on the road, but we're going to go out and get out into the community and begin to talk about institutional racism, bias, and policing, as well as just look at the history of law enforcement and how that has impacted people's perspective, particularly Black and brown communities, and have these conversations out in the community all over this city so people can get a true understanding and real front and center understanding of how different communities are treated by law enforcement. So then we can come back and find ways to figure out what we can do as a community and as law enforcement to bridge all of those gaps and make sure that everybody is treated in a respectable manner. And then lastly, we are going to work with our Community Police Oversight Board and on all of the general orders and all the policies of the police department and ask them to review those policies and work with the police department to see what needs to be updated and revised. And so I believe these 11 steps, particularly the one about the community conversation, in addition to the things that we're just going to do because they're the right things to do in the first 90 days, I think that will play a big part in helping us build trust in the community and truly be responsive. And we'll figure out if we're missing some of the things that many of the activists and others really want to see. So I think and so that's pretty much what we've been doing. Yesterday, we had a conversation at the council and I received a letter or a memo from at least 10 of them wanting to have this conversation about looking at other creative ways beyond just funding public safety, to look at alternative means to finding a way to get at some root cause issues out in the community that might benefit and reduce the influence of law enforcement proper in some of these communities. And so, again, they've challenged me to come back as part of my budget and lay out some options and some opportunities for them to reinvest some of those funds that we might want to spend on law enforcement into some things that can be constructive for the community. So that conversation is ongoing. I think it will come to a head August 11th when I present the budget, and then play out over the next month or so after that as they talk about what will go into our city budget beginning October 1st.
Okay. I've only got a couple more questions for you.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, we enjoy the information. About the city's economy with everything that's been going on. I know the city's put out a lot of information about how it can help small business. Has there been any discussions about as the state opens, the city opens up again, what the city can do to help small businesses kind of get back on their feet? Because obviously it's going to be a little bit of a lag time before things can get back to economic normalcy. So is the city prepared to, or is having any conversations about what that'll look like within the next few months or even within the next year?
Yes, we are. I was actually on a call earlier today talking about what we can be doing in partnership with some of our philanthropic as well as our larger business community, particularly around some of the smaller businesses that might, one, not have had access to the federal government loan programs or may have been disqualified as it relates to being able to receive those funds just based on the hiring nature and or their affiliation with their employees. And so we are looking to work and partner and leverage our funds. I know we spent or had allocated about $5 million initially, I believe, in a loan program. We are actually exploring to see if, in fact, there may be more dollars through the CARES Act that we might be able to invest in our small businesses. There are some organizations coming to us asking us, can we partner in guaranteeing some of those loans as well? So we're looking at a myriad of opportunities to help our small businesses, and I'm hopeful to be able to share something with my city council in the next week or two that might add a layer of funding over and above what we've already expended. I know we're also looking at not just the business pieces of it, but seeing if there's more we can do for people who may be having financial challenges around rent and or other types of mortgage assistance based on the fact that they're not working, which obviously is a trickle-down effect of our businesses shutting down. So again, I know we are looking, whether it's PPE that may or may not be able to be donated to allow some of these smaller businesses to get a little bit of a head start who may not have the financial wherewithal to do PPE, as well as just try to open their doors. And so there are a lot of groups, and the city is one of them, working in this community to figure out what we can do to help people transition back into what would be, quote unquote, the new normal, and hopefully build back up what they had already begun building without our assistance, helping them be stronger going forward.
All right. Finally, I'd like to just get your comments on, so the president's in town and there is no Black leadership at the conversations about racial injustice and systemic racism. Mayor, city manager, DA, police chief, sheriff, even 3 Congress people and some other ones. Does the city have any response to the lack of representation of leadership at this particular event, or are y'all just holding your hands up going, yeah, we're just going to be over here at 1500 Marilla?
So we're going to continue, at least me, I'm going to continue to focus on the things that I can control. And so we're going to keep working with the community. I'm going to keep working with our mayor and council to address Dallas specific needs, and then hope to obviously amplify those needs up throughout all organizations and or individuals in our city. And so again, if I was at, I think, that meeting, I wouldn't probably be able to be in this meeting with you. So I'm much rather be talking with you right now, talking about some of the things that we're doing in Dallas. And I find that far more productive. So I appreciate the question, but I'm excited to continue to do what we're doing to try to help uplift the people here in Dallas.
And we do appreciate it. And thank you for your time, Mr. Broadnax. My name is Patrick Washington. This has been Dallas Weekly Interviews. You can catch this and more on dallasweekly.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And our mobile app is able to be downloaded on iOS and other streaming services. So thank you again, Mr. Broadnax, and have a good day. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you. All right, Patrick. Thank you. Have a good day.